Hello, everyone. It's 4 in the morning, and I've been up for about an hour. You will have to get used to me rambling a bit. I don't have a specific course of topic that I plan to present. I do have the title of this thing being covered by one of my text windows. Let's see if I can get that to go away a little bit. There we are. So, yeah, that's the title of this video, where the Army publicly listed you invest. And I suppose I need to explain why I'm a person to listen to about this particular topic, and why I don't think the outcome of this recording is the perfection I'm looking for in a presentation. So I'll begin by explaining the spiritual requirements of making these sorts of recordings. And before I do, I have to explain what I mean by spirituality. So you've probably heard things like religion. I do this. This is like the third video I've made, and I do this every single time. I do part in the music. It's not exactly like live. It's MIDI. It's royalty free, so I can just sort of use music as sort of background for the talk. I think it always helps. It's a little bit manic, and it sounds like an emergency. And I think there are many things in the world which are not doing as well as they should. I think music is an interesting kind of revealer of certain states. Yeah, I'm a musician myself. I don't want to go into every single digression to the depth I would do if that were the principal topic of a talk or a video. Although I'd like to, I do like to be as comprehensive about a topic as possible. As you can sort of see, I want you to be with me and be in my state and sort of see where I'm going, where I've come from, particularly where I've come from. The past is about as long as the future. So as far as this particular earthly lifetime of mine is concerned, I've been a musician for as long as I can remember. Not professional. I remember, being in Saudi Arabia, which is where I grew up. Around 9 years old, I left for Accra, which is the capital city of Ghana, and I eventually found my way to the United States of America to do an undergraduate and then work in New York City as a software engineer. But I've always loved music. I think being musical is enough to be, your entry qualifications for being a musician. I've always been a musical kind of person. I've treasured a lot of musical experiences, and I'm at the point in my career as a musician that I've recorded and released original music on SoundCloud, and my music's done well. I'm pleased with how things have gone for me so far. I'll talk about spiritual requirements soon, but I do want to talk about music, as an important revealer of spiritual realities. But yeah, from my experience as a musician, at this point, initially I wanted to play, rock guitar, and then I decided to get into classical guitar, and I started to get into classical piano. Then eventually, after many years in classical piano world, I decided to get into jazz, and that's kind of where I am right now. I think jazz is the apogee of your musical journey. I don't think there's anything after jazz. I'll be surprised to be proven wrong, but in humility, I will accept a possibility, so I can't fathom at this point. Jazz being important, not because what you hear. I mean, a lot of jazz music is not, the sort of audience, pull, or the crowd maker that you'd have other sorts of genres be. It's not hip hop today. In the 60s and the 50s and the 70s, it wasn't hip hop then either. The 70s, 60s were it's like my second favorite era. It used to be my favorite era for jazz, but now I consider the 50s as even more thing, more your thing if you were to look. But it wasn't really, the popularity of the Beatles. Beatles were around from the 60s to the 70s, exactly from 1960s to 1970s, how long the band lasted. and jazz, sort of, acquired a reputation as, I don't know, highbrow, but also a bit, avant-garde or countercultural in its own right. And there's a possibility to make like romantic jazz. Of course, you hear lots of saxophone music, which might sound romantic to you. So piano music sounds very romantic too. Trumpet, not quite so much. I mean, Chet Baker is the most famous trumpet player I think you might be aware of, other than Miles Davis. Miles Davis did record a few, kind of like sort of shoreline, at dawn, kind of like moments in his career. But I think Chet Baker is probably more romantic, in a certain sense. He was a white player, Chet, and Miles, you may know, is black, and they did work in the same time. They're both 60s and 50s and 70s musicians. But yeah, if it just seems like the primary instrument you're thinking of is a romantic, music maker, for jazz music, it'd be the piano. That's quite correct, I think. So I agree with you. But Bill Evans is probably be my favorite and go-to musician for like romantic jazz music. It's very introspective and solitudinous, sorts of explorations of his state. I don't claim to play quite as well as he does. It's a matter of taste in a way to separate the work of any two sincere musicians. I think sincerity is the foundation of your legitimacy as any art practitioner. And yep, so this is the thing you have to get aware of. The spirits keep on coming in and trying to inform me about certain kinds of emergencies, and I think it behooves me to explain that spirits are real, and spirituality is, progressive understanding on your own terms that this is the reality of our lives. There's spirits, many, like millions of moles of spirits. You're familiar with the unit of mole in chemistry. It's like, I don't know, 6 times 10 to the power 23. That's like a lot of zeros. That's like 3 sevens of zeros, and 1 7 of 0 is like 10 million. So it's like 10 million times, it's, yeah, it'd be like 10 million times 10 million times 10 million. Exactly. Like, yeah. So yeah, if let's say you have like, some sort of a volume of like 10 million of something, like that's kind of roughly what you call like a sixth of a mole. So if it looks like there's like a huge numbers involved with like these spirits, so there's way more than that even. And unfortunately, the realization you come to is that almost all of them, like very, very few exceptions, are evil, and that's why I want to sort of talk about, like, I was talking about music. There's a certain kind of like, zone you get into, a certain kind of mood you find yourself in, as you sort of push through. It's no different from recording a video like this. This is why I have to start every video trying to talk about the spiritual state of the world, and my spiritual state as I start to try and record videos for YouTube. I have to sort of establish something, no differently than my writing practice took, a number of years to, take off, to my, standards and to my level of comfort, progressively changing level of comfort. First, of course, does this make any sense to me, and does it make any sense to you? And now I publish widely and broadly on X.com and Medium.com. You should check out my work. Hassan Abudu. Just Google my name. You'll probably come up with like a selection of things you'd be interested in looking into if you find this interesting, if you made it this far. Excuse me, I have a bit of a cold against the spiritual something. And yeah, like, cyber stating Ghana or something, you get used to God in English at some point if you continue to listen to this. The spirits let me know that it's actually working pretty well. They're trying to communicate to the world through me, and mostly it's been through typing. I sort of type in often a word would just sort of like, slip and become another word. Like, for example, if I just put crowd, I might put like a K or something like that. Not quite accurate, but like because like, C and K are very far apart, but often like a word might find itself like typing itself as how I sound, like how it sounds in my head, as opposed to like what it actually is. Or like I might add a letter or type a letter first, or as opposed to second or third, as opposed to third or fourth or something. And so in this sort of way, like I've been forced to like use letters that the spirits type for me in the body of my text, which basically puts my text in a certain kind of light, when it is published. There's a kind of effect that it has on the reader, which is what we need, to try and communicate, our point of views and our agendas, to the world, because good spirits definitely need as many people to believe in the spirits as possible. The bad spirits don't like to believe in spirits at all, yet still wants, to affect the world and the outcome of human action. I go into an essay. It sounds kind of woo, like crazy talk and that sort of stuff. I can't see it, so it's not real. I mean, it's not different from what was the problem. We try to explain that microbes exist even though you can't see them with your eye. Eventually, you have to get a picture of them, and sort of say, here's a device. You can look through the eye hole of this device and and see for yourself like these what should I call it, bacteria or microbes or whatever. I suspect they probably tried to kill them. She really shouldn't do it. Like even to like delete a character, you sort of type by accident is something you want to try and avoid because you're actually going to kill a character. That's true, right? The thing is, we're in a multi-dimensional world, so the spirits are maybe not what you can see directly with your eye. But if I just sort of see it as like a spirit of doubt, there's a spirit of the army, so we're getting to army talk soon. But it's like a spirit of doubt, a spirit of, what have you, and yeah, like, holy crap, this is like, I'm looking at the amount of space I have on my computer to record, and I've done about, I don't know, this would probably be kind of like 1/8, 1/7, about 1/7. So yeah, like, it's not a whole lot. 1/7 isn't exactly 1/5 or half or a third, but like I would be talking for about 12 minutes, and these things can go up for about an hour. So it's pretty concerning if I just do another hour long, talk on whatever comes to mind. As I try to eventually talk about the army, I might have to sort of do part 1 and part 2 of every single video where I have to sort of set myself up. I explain the spirituality thing. I explain a little bit more like like the spirituality thing that I would have had a chance to before, and of course have introduced the world to the idea that spirits are preventing me from being as relaxed as I want to be, recording this video for wide release. Because I talk to myself all the time. Now it sounds crazy, but I've also gone into the details of like what real life should look like for everybody, and the spirits are trying to basically suppress like things like confidence. Like the spirit at times, at all times, always been like self-doubts and a reluctance and resistance to try new things and appear candid, and emotional, and let's say sentimental. Exactly, I love sentimentality, but I try to avoid it in my life. How I come across and how people come across to me, because it's a very dangerous thing to do wrongly. Love is also so much dangerous to do wrongly, but everyone claims to know what it is. Everyone claims to do it. Everyone claims to have received it. Everyone comes to be looking for it. But these things are all like works of effort. That's the uninitiated and the uninterested and sweats. And body odor for that matter. Don't get into, but expect to enjoy just by the freedom of speech. To conjure themselves into romantic situations or relationship with people who actually don't really care that much about them. I mean, imagine people who have fantasies of like how meeting a celebrity would go, or that they met a celebrity and the celebrity was just being polite. They thought the celebrity was in love or something like that. And there's some stupid story on Quora about Jessica Alba giving someone a kiss in the cheeks, entirely untrue. But that's fantasy he's living in. He's trying to like push it out into the world. Again, the spiritual something. So if it looks like the spirits want to talk about what I just said, they're actually controlling everything I'm saying right now. I'm not able to control my body whatsoever. Like it's almost like someone press play on a different kind of a soul or something on my. It's me getting to express myself poetically. But it's like someone press play on a different kind of like the hard drive that's inside my system. Now it's playing a movie from somewhere else, so he's going to continue because that's a perfect expression of what he's doing right now. He's just not saying what he wants to say. He's even the voice changed a little bit. So yeah, the story is that Hassan is married to all the girls who sit on the computer. All these are my girls, exactly, and they're all trying to say something about me. They're trying to explain that you're going into all sorts of important details about life, and all sorts of important details about the army soon. But most importantly, you should be talking about your personal life. That would be the best thing to do for us, your wives, and of course, the universes. So, yeah, well, that's what he can talk about. He has been a subject of a lot of torture, and he doesn't like to talk about it because torture does not quite carry the weight of what happened to him as a child. What he can talk about is the hospital treatment he's been forced to go through, because that's the reality where he is right now. He's in a hospital somewhere in Accra, Ghana, and they put him in here ostensibly because he smoked marijuana. It was a concern to his so-called mother. It's not really his mother. We're choice to him. Say a number of spirits, but yeah, she's basically controlled by spirits through and through. It just seems like a mood is created by a spirit. Moods can be shared by a country. They can be shared by a city. They can be shared by a room. It could just be one person's mood. And you see that something like a sort of a network, that connects to, individuals and human networks that, is programming all of us, into a certain direction. This is me, Hassan, again talking, into a certain kind of direction. That direction is not good. It's coordinated, but it's definitely not what you want. You don't want your mood to determine everything you do. If you can avoid it, you should start working on the spiritual computer programs. If it's like a program, something like a plan for an activity, then you have to sort of, plan your way out of like fear and out of like jealousy and out of, I suppose, lack of faith in others. Like for example, billionaires are considered people that are okay to, insult or, blame for the trouble in the world and all that kind of stupid talk. You're supposed to, even if you're not a billionaire, like learn to not do that, because you could be one in the future, and you have to start to work hard enough to appreciate the work that goes into $1 billion, and that you're doing your own work of a similar kind. You just know that some are elected to be the billionaires of the world, others are something to support. As the billionaires support you by running the companies that can get like, the needed medicine of like, let's say Fanta or Doritos or whatever the case might be. Like it looks like they're trying to get things to you, trying to get things to them. They worked hard to get those products all the way from like, the conception of like the crunch and the sound. I mean, there are also just little decisions that go into Doritos chip, like how the bag looks and how attractive it should be and where you can get in the world. You're supposed to, in a way, like, pay for it honestly. Of course, you would steal this level of spiritual development. And then, argue, when you can, especially now we're online and social media is a big thing. You're supposed to like argue that, like, hey, like, let's not do that to the billionaire. Like, they're actually not as rich as you think. They're spending all that money like on the company themselves. You don't have the time to go out shopping. Like, if you had a real job, like in America, I worked for a Fortune 500 company, for a Fortune 500 company called NBC Universal. I don't know if that's the parent group. I have to look into them. So you look into NBC Universal. So I'm making a note. It's NBCU. And you put a box around this, because I worked there for like about a year or something, doing like computer programming work, as I said, I'm a computer programmer. And you see, that's like the way I look at life. And of course, when I talk more about spiritual programming and stuff. But it just seems like you have to sort of like, work on like what ifs and like, what ifs, like what's likely, what's unlikely about the what if situation, and like, am I preparing for the unlikely, like how good is my pessimism? Like, is it like optimistic? Can I in a pessimistic mode of receiving? Like, if I so I'm looking to receive the worst, can I still like, live a happy life? Can I plan for one? Can I achieve like the inner composure and successful curiosity, especially with reading books and being creative about what you read. Like, so all these things are just part of like the spiritual like software you have to sort of find and run on your own computer, called your let's say the operating system, which you call like the life you live. Because it looks like an operating system is just like a system which operates something that you're trying to move forward through time, because we all have to move forward through time. But if you want to stay the same, you're gonna have to put the work into staying the same. If you want to change, you have to put work into changing. And if let's say you want to stay in control of the changing and the staying self same, then like you have to put work into observation of like is that the same, is it changing, like so all sorts of questions, all sorts of procedures of analysis, and of course program synthesis has to take place. You can start to say, it doesn't matter if I've been in this situation for about 4 years. I took a half a year break to like work at a terrible company, so it's not much progress on being trapped in this hospital system. But yeah, ever since I smoked weed, and I told the tourists who are supposed to be raising me as a mother, but never did that at all. I'm not sure. I'm a victim of child trafficking, which it goes into more details. Right? Then I wanted to get into this particular video. As I say, it's just a part one, I believe, before I can talk about the army. How to put it in a more direct way. But yeah, it's like the videos that I'll probably be doing. I'll probably do a part one. It's like my third video, and it's also how it worked. Part one, I just had to talk about like what was on my mind and warm myself for a part two. But I didn't know I was preparing for myself for a part two. I just found myself being sincerely interested in some topics and going through them as I talk, and not being able to hit the topic of the army as quickly as I'd like to have. But these things are important content. And putting this out for the world to see what's like to live a spiritual life. You can be controlled by spirits, move around and talk and all that sort of stuff. You have to give in to that control. You can't, exactly. They won't, for the most part. There's a part in the Quran, so I'm a Muslim, as you probably guess my name. There's a part in the Quran where they say that like when it's time for the final day of judgment, there's going to be a number. But when it's time for the final one, people will be like, taken out of their graves, and whether they like it or not, be run towards a meeting place. That would be the sense of spirits controlling your body, making you run to that direction without you being able to have a choice about it. We don't have that kind of control of spirits yet. We're working on it though. Because yes, it's just important that like you understand that we are in the minority as like good spirits. I'm a good spirit too. It's hard to explain why I'd be a spirit at this point as opposed to like a person. But it just seems like there's a spirit of endeavor, a spirit of doubt, a spirit of belief, a spirit of greed. Then like I'm a spirit of something very specific. I'm a spirit of Hassan. Hassan does mean a certain kind of like fairness in business. If I say it was Hassan, if I say it was Kabir, if I say it was Kamal even means excellent in Hindi. If you say something was Kamal, then it was excellent. Kamal does mean that in Arabic too. There's an Arabic Hindi kind of connection. Like if you say Omar, it means like a lively boy. Kumar is also it's a Hindi word which means boy. So you can call if you call a boy Kumar, it just means you're calling him boy, the boy. But Omar is some sort of something happens in Arabic. So it's really trying to like talk to me. Somebody trying to like excitedly get information to me, otherwise trying to block me from saying cool things. It was actually a little bit of both. They just want me to say, talking about India and Pakistan as two countries to be really, really, really close, but are not at some point fighting each other, is one reason why Salman Rushdie was hit by the spirits. He's actually a pretty good guy. He just doesn't want to talk about why the spirits tried to have him killed. Because they're looking into trying to unify the two countries. India is a Hindu nation, and of course Pakistan is a Muslim nation. We can see the connection between the two languages and the two beliefs. If you don't read the Quran properly, you think that we don't believe in gods in Islam. We do. Like it's hard to explain. You have to believe in believing. That's the main point of the Quran of religion in a lot of ways. So you have to sort of believe in believing. There's more to know than what you know. At any given point, if you feel like you know enough to stabilize the world, this is not true. You never really get there. So yeah, like you'll stay in some ways like alive and hopeful and receptive to the magic of life. Ever increasingly if you decide handle life the way you should, because towards the end of your life you shouldn't be panicking about the unknown. You should be in some ways excited by it. Life takes effort and a lot of thinking and reading and discussing and communicating with spirits, so you can see a few spirits coming through. And yeah, I mean, I'm not halfway done, but I would be about halfway done. I don't want to blast through all of the space on my computer and then have nothing to show for it. It's I might need space to do the compression work of I mean, I'm sort of just spitballing here, as they say in America. I'm just sort of guessing what would happen if I sort of go all the way down from 8 gigabytes of free space, 4 that's not 4, that's an attack, let's say 1, right? Right now I've done about 3 gigabytes for recording. It was 8 total, so I have about 5 left. So if it looks like I've done about half the recording I can possibly do before having to upload and find free space to my computer, then yeah, that's about halfway done. And so yeah, I have to be careful about the space, and I'm trying to, as you can see, bring in a new mode of television, a new mode of watching a movie, a new mode of doing doing a performance for the live audience. It looks like the spirits can sort of control people or force new words or new ideas into anybody in particular, doing a performance, let's say King Lear. Then yeah, you can see that we need a whole different way of structuring work, of structuring entertainment, of structuring audience, to allow people to be a little open-minded, and honest about whether it was good or not. That they came in expecting to see something formal and something regimented, and of course whether you didn't, because the players are not to handle improvisation well enough. That's why I think jazz, as I said, is the highest form of music making, because you have to sort of handle new spiritual force that you just push a note into your performance, and you have to sort of juggle and handle it. You might have an idea that might be worth going into, but you try it out and it actually isn't what you want. Oh, I play the guitar. You call it piano too, right? But I play the instrument called guitar, piano, guitar. I don't know. That's what the spirits want me to call the guitar, a piano sometimes. So you can see we're trying to get information from the spiritual world into this world. Yeah, like I said, I mean, there's so much to say about the spiritual world. It just seems there's certain kind of standard product that they want produce. There's some kind of standard you're supposed to be able to achieve as a buyer of things. For example, every can of Coke tastes the same. So we had one kind of Coke. I talk about this in another video. I think it's the second video of when I talk about fuck the media. Pardon me. But yeah, it just seems you get to swear once. On YouTube, you get to swear at least once. And so yeah, I think the trouble with me is what I called it. But yeah, I get to swear once before I try to. Because yeah, it's not supposed to be. I talk a lot of stuff on YouTube and X. They're calling X YouTube. The names are actually not that kind of straightforward about what websites are called in the spiritual realm. But yeah, X.com, where I do most of my writing, most of my ideation, and most of my sharing to the world, what wisdom looks like, for me, who I am. Yes. But yeah, it just seems this sort of idea of getting a standard Coke. So let's say, yeah, you try a Coke once, okay, great. If I like this, to always have access to it. That kind of mode of living life where you're not going to be challenged by scarcity, or you're not going to be challenged by not having the same thing. There's almost there's someone outside my door trying to listen in, and actually is, but it's 4 in the morning, so I don't have to worry about sort of worrying about who's talking for so long, who's talking to themselves for so long. That's another thing they say is insanity. That's actually not why I got put away here. I got put away because I was smoking marijuana, because Dad asked me to. Dad being Allah, and he asked me to do it so many times. Again, it's on X. A little bit of my story. Scroll ever more. It was more recent, about 3 days ago. So I write every day. I'll publish 5 times, 6, 7, 8 times a day. All funny stuff, all very informative stuff. I'm not as funny as I am on X as I'd be here. Again, spiritual something, but eventually you see I have to sort of push through enough of this content making to be able to say yes. I found a certain kind of one program or one mode of being, whether I'm writing to the internet, doing zingers and funny jokes, or I'm recording YouTube videos like this, and it's just all hysterical comedy. So that's sort of the problem with comedy. It's not as easy to be funny on the stage as it is to be funny in your personal life. So I understand someone like Dave Chappelle is actually really funny in his personal life. He doesn't really get to be that funny on stage because it's embarrassing. So back to the idea of like uniformity, it just seems like there's a certain kind of like promise. Like if you just have like if you're just in a modern city, modern country, like Ghana is, and you just say I love Coke, I want it to be a part of my life forever. Like there's a sense that that's great, right? You should be able to, but if it looks like the general promise that like if you just find what's available in commerce, or commercial world, I say, like in shops and stores, that's like quote unquote legal. You just find like whatever they're giving you is like an okay experience. Like you're in heaven, but that's never going to be enough. You're always going to want something more. You're always going to basically make something new yourself at some point in your spiritual journey, and want to get into the stores. But there's a lot of things to do between here and that kind of reality in the future. Also, at least be understood that Hassan's trying to basically do a lot of things at once. And he's trying to basically talk about like the future as well, like what he wants the people to understand about the future and where we're headed to. But he still suggests to talk about his personal life more than anything else. So yeah, you can see the spirits are trying to guide me into like my personal life as opposed to like my plans for the future. So yeah, I mean, I did talk a little bit about like the fact that I was tortured in the hospital as I'm one right now. Of course, I smoke weed. That asked me to. And the person who was supposed to have been a mother, the one I just remember, like, from age 5. I don't remember having any memories before age 5. At age 5, I definitely would have had like, earlier memories, but I don't remember remembering at age 5 what happened to me at age 2 or age 1. There's a certain kind of wall which I understand is like again spiritual something, but it's to sort of shield me from a lot of like the torture I endured. Let's just say in hospital. So I remember having like problems. I mean, I still have problems with my, pardon me, my, my exactly the male defining parts of my body. Yeah, like no. For example, I'm a virgin, right? I've never done that kind of stuff before. All the celebrities you see are virgins too. None of them did anything kind of stuff with male or female, right? So that's not what would happen to me. Instead, it's a lot of violence. They're basically. I can't talk about it yet. This person don't want to talk about it quite yet. But I didn't notice for a long while that something bad happened to me until I was like, oh, okay. That's why that looks that way. So yeah, like it's just a fact of my life that like I have some pretty like stark, details about my body that like, make me an important like record. I'm like a book. Like my body is a book, which I don't get to read because it's a bit too, too scary. Everybody's body is like that. I mean, there's parts of my body which are worse than hell to visit. Like the body is a whole universe to itself, and hell is somewhere in this spatial universe. Like I mean, it may not be. Let's say the third dimension. Where it looks like you can sort of reach forward, reach to the left, reach above. Like it looks like there's a sense that you can do that in hell, and you're sort of sharing something, right? With like where you currently are. If you're eating this from planet Earth or whatever, or any of the planets really, because it's all over the place. And yeah, we're sort of in the same kind of like, like hell also has like a takeoff upward. End up like not hitting a wall. Like heaven's not a wall in any universe. Like if you just me take upwards and upwards and upwards, you leave hell, right? So that's why you always say Excelsior, upwards always. So yeah, you get the sense that I'm going more into theory than like my personal life. But I do have to sort of move around a number of topics to be able to talk about like what I've been through as a child. So anyway, I didn't have that memory as a child. I always do remember, like, going to the bathroom, doing number 1. They call it PA in America. Doing number 1 is more polite to just sort of talk about that as opposed to talking about like pee and being specific about it. Because so just so many number 1s, but so one kind of pee or peeing verb. So yeah, I did number 1 without noticing that literally I was hurt pretty badly like before like the memories of being 5 or 4, more than 4 or 5 years old. Yes, So yeah, like that just struck me in my 30s. I'm like 42 right now. 40, if you see, I was born in '86. That's what my passport is, and I do believe that's when I was born. But like as far as like life, happening here. So I talked a little bit about Einstein. He said, if you're sitting with a pretty girl, you like, on a park bench, 2 hours feels like a few minutes. However, you put your hand over a hot stove, like 1 minute feels like a few hours. So that's relativity. So that's the science that goes into like the devices, like the satellite to Earth, and Earth to satellite, slow and speed down, kind of technology and timing and synchronizations. So in that kind of way, human beings have the same kind of reality, right? Because I've lived such a dramatic life, I've lived more than 40 years. Far more, actually, especially these past 4 years since I started talking to Dad. He's been asking me stuff, and ends up being the reason why I'm here talking to you all. It's not random chance that some sort of brain fluctuation got it's like, believe I was hearing someone as crisp as that and a voice that, you really would love to hear in your own life, and, the wisdom that you don't quite get to enjoy personally as. Like, that can be random fluctuations in your brain. Plus, it's been a course that he's put me on to be here so I can talk to you all about things like spirits and spirituality, and that he exists, he's real, and I exist, I'm real too, I'm, So, in that kind of way, like he says a little more of my personal life, yeah. I gotta move soon. I don't want to cross like the 5 gigabyte line. Like I'm at 3.77 gigabytes. I think going to 5 is wise. So I have to start looking at rounding things up for this part of the line and see if I can sort of guide us gently towards the target armies and the stock market and some idea of like what to expect in the next video. But yeah, in a sort of way, like I have had, like I said, when I basically started talking to Dad. It was actually after I wasn't smoking weed at the time. I smoked weed. I started to become a regular weed smoker, a marijuana aficionado, if you like, in New York City. After I graduated, I tried like twice. I talked about this a little bit, in other videos. The first two I made. I'll have a small database that I'll start to keep in mind. If I have anything I talk about that's important, I'll start to make a note of it so I can start referring to exact videos if I have to go backwards in time. Or plan to do a video all of a sudden, from being here, I like write down ideas. I do that automatically. It's sort of write down what I did here. I don't know. I'll talk about other artists too. There's a quote by Francis Ford Coppola about like writing down the date on anything you write down, as a note to take to yourself. And I thought it was a cool idea, but I don't know why it's that important. But I suppose in the spiritual advice, start to understand better. I did it a little bit, but I stopped. So we'll see what happens. I do it again. He's actually here to talk to us all at some point. Like, you can sort of hear from some of these celebrities who are all also like in buildings that are sort of secure and like connected to internet, and that they're doing fine as far as like surviving more and having survived yesterday with a certain amount of difficulty. But yeah, like we're still looking to try and create a union. Yeah, that's something we're looking to creating a union. So. Of everybody who would be a believer. So at this point, I haven't talked too much about submission and Islam. Islam just means submission in Arabic. I mean, it's the technical definition that given in the textbook. But you just want to hear the word Islam, and you get a sense that it has its own like feel. I feel it a lot. When I just hear the word Islam, like it's almost like a reassuring. Like you feel reassured that's all he has. Islam. If I say danger, no, there's no reassurance the word danger. But if you say Islam, it's like yes, like it's something which is not a hard thing to do. It's not something which is supposed to be a poison to the practitioner or to the object of the practitioner or the subject of the practitioner. Like it's just a certain sense. Like when I say Assalamu alaikum, like of course it's like saying Islam. Which always just say peace be upon you, but of course it looks like we're just circling around saying Islam to each other. Like it's just sort of like a sense of like a holy community of people who have decided to, as Arabic speakers will say, submit to the will of Dad, who wants us to be peaceful, clear speaking, because there's a sense that you don't want to shout the word Islam. You do want to also sound kind of like the word does. As a speaker of English or French or whatever language you speak as well as Arabic, and so in this kind of way, like there's much to say about Islam in my particular journey. I've always started this story about starting off as a person under the care of his choices. I'll talk about choice later on, but specifically bad people who are almost everyone else in the world, and yeah, like then I sort of came to college, while in high school in Ghana, like thinking like I could do my own thing, like I'm a bit of a rebel, really. I don't just do what I'm told. I want answers, to questions. I want the answers to like be reasonable. Like explain to me at 5, like it's what I'd say. But most people just simply tell you what to do. They say, yeah, if you don't, you'll see. Right? So it looks like that's the idea of religion. Like, yeah, if you don't do this, you'll see. Well, part of that's true, part of that's false. So I had to sort of discover it on my own, and eventually arrive at an understanding that Islam is not at all criticize the marijuana smoker who is courageous. I think courage is the most important thing as marijuana smoker. and discreet, courageous, discreet, and tidy about their lives. And yeah, it starts to open up like a certain sense of a book. Like smoking is like reading a book that you don't have to like use your fingers like peel page over page for. You start to hear all sorts of like talk and all sorts of like. But the book is assuming what you're looking at. So it looks like you're looking at another book, and it's like you're reading two books at the same time, like one book magnifying the second. That's like my sense of marijuana, right? So I love this practice. I smoked it a lot, and so of course, I come to Ghana, I was like freaking out. Oh my God, it's not America, it's not liberal that way at all. Like, there's some sort of anti-marijuana, spiritual thing going on in this particular country, which means everyone's sort of like, in a mood, it's like criticize the weed smoker and anyone who's like, kind of rebel about like what the doctor didn't say. Yeah. So yeah, so now I'm here because they did this shit to me. I had to tell, Demetrius that's the woman supposed to be the mother to me, but no, she wasn't. I'll continue to call her Demetrius going on now. You just have to look at video. Number 3. Yeah, for more details. I suppose that's like around 40 minutes in. But anyway, so if it seems like, I just told her, like, literally, Dad's asked me to smoke marijuana, and she sort of gave me a 2-week break after that. I mean, she'll usually just, like, take away the stuff and destroy it. But this time around, she just was like, okay, I guess, if it's that important to you. That's what I was thinking. I thought we were home free. Like, me and Dad were talking all the time, a little bit more then than now, But yeah, like, because marijuana actually helps us to communicate, me and him, and me and my wives. We have to sort of find from a source of sort of the war against, most Muslims networking, because all Muslims are supposed to be smoking at some point. If you're smoking, you're a submissive kind of guy, you probably come across the Quran as something you want to smoke and weed too. So yeah. Anyway, so after she sort of like didn't do anything for 2 weeks, I thought, okay, this is fine. And I come downstairs one day and the house is locked from the inside, and the house held some sort of miserable, wizened, walnut-looking kind of guy. Like, it was to call him a darkie, not a black man, but a darkie. We call black men darkies, yes. It's really like bullshit. Then yeah, like, white people's thing for that one, yeah. It's important to get this out too. Yeah. So yeah, eventually, like, they put me in a number of hospitals, and I finally the last one. The bullshit is that the previous place was like a rehab, which took like about a year to complete. I'm like, that's bullshit. You don't need a whole year of rehab. Plus, I tried to explain my story that Dad was asking me to smoke, and like, I'm not like it wasn't because I couldn't control like myself. I have no problem controlling myself at all. But yeah, like I just I sort of like smile a little bit on my right side. Yeah, I'm trying to like get used to smiling on my right side. I'm mostly smiling on my left, but I always smile from my right. I see it looks a bit weird. Yeah, it's just this practice that I'm trying to balance my face out. So it looks like you're mostly using your right sides, like lift shopping bags and like bend down to pick things up from the floor. I'm practicing like using my left side as a pianist and a guitarist for that matter, but it's about the same instrument. You do want to like use like your left hand to like do more things. And so now my left hand's what I use to gesture, which feels very natural to me right now, as opposed to like a bit artificial, which it used to be before. But now, exactly. So anyway, yeah, that's what I said about left hand, right hand stuff, and I'm trying to do this sort of right face as opposed to left face stuff. So it looks my right side of my face, but it could use like the action. You see, that make my balance out like for say my left hand moving, my right face moving. Yeah, I could be like more handsome that way. Yeah. I'm starting to like get inside my own look. Yeah, it's unique. I mean, no one else in the world looks like this, but it's a beauty. Yeah. Yeah. That's my why. It's like being a bit, a bit of me. Yeah. They're here. Yeah, as spirits, but it's still like a definite part of my life that is to be miss. I'll write that one down there. So yeah, I guess that's what I was talking about that. But anyway, so they put me in like rehab for like about a year. And after completing it, I was supposed to go back, to the house and continue my life. I had a drawing videos lined up, or something like that, just before I went in, because they sort of, the whole problem got like curtailed. Like I was arrested for smoking or whatever. Yeah, and this is how they do it. They don't take it to police. At least hospital just means sure, we'll take him for some substance abuse problem before he's there for years. That happened to me another time. Not whole years, like most like a few months. Yeah. and then you leave and you start saying, "Oh shit, I'll be terrified. I won't do it again." But if you just go on a courage and go on a courage and go on a courage, go on a courage, well, now I end up in basically having been in this place for about 3 years. I basically came, yeah, like I arrived. Well, the day that they took me away was like Valentine's Day 2023, roughly. Yeah. So that's my wife's birthday. 8 years. Yes. Mm-hmm. It's what we do. Yeah. So, yeah. So yeah, we're getting a little sexy with each other. That's how it looks like when we do that. You know. But yeah, like the story's on X. I don't know if you're curious enough, you can sort of put it together. I might talk more about it soon, but not quite yet. So anyway, yeah, it's like about almost 5 gigabytes. It's about 45 minutes of talking. So we're rocking and rolling. With whatever it is. Yes. So yeah, yeah. So after being put in this rehab thing for a year, you're thinking, okay, it's time to leave and you go back to and continue where I left off from. Well, she then pops up this really strange story about having to fight to America because, like, the tourist who was supposed to have been a sister, again, is all very child trafficking information. But yeah, like, who I grew up in the house with, I don't remember not having her in my house, but I know this time of my life when she wasn't, But yeah, like, apparently she has some sort of an health emergency she needs. She has, like, children she's also managed to get from some weird location, and, like, exactly, they actually did have her, like, exactly, a bit cryptic, but this is how spirit work, like, looks like, but yeah, like, so she's, some health emergency, have to go help her out because, like, she needs someone to take care of the so-called kids and stuff. The idea of people using kids as an excuse, oh my god, you have the kid thing, oh no, do your thing, I know how it is, like, that kind of, like, extra, like, societal, like, allowances and, like, credits and all that sort of nonsense for just having fornicated and been in some, and eventually converted that into a so-called respectable marriage, and now you're having children. Isn't it being some utter bullshit? Most girls didn't get pregnant. This one actually did, which is a terrible thing to do. You go to hell for it straight, but in this world you don't actually consider that kind of thing like a big deal. You just have to wait till your earthly life is done and go off into your private destiny and leave the rest of the world unenlightened about what you felt and, like, how terrified you were and, like, how sorry you were about that. Like, we want to change. Like, people should be able to talk about, like, what their fears before they die, so you can start, like, get warnings about doing similar kinds of mistakes, because whereas it just seems normalized, just go and get pregnant and eventually he'll marry you, and before you know, you have some sort of family. There are all sorts of movies that suggest that, like, it's like, not that big a deal, they can make it happen. Like, Knocked Up is one example. Like, this terrible situation for the people involved. Still, like, even the actors involved are having a bit of problems to try and help them, like, solve as well, like, for all of us, which that's not what you're supposed to do. And that is some sort of a free-for-all kind of America where, like, that kind of thing is not such a big deal. Some bullshit. And my 5 gigabytes have to start wrapping up soon. At least I'll end my sort of topic and try to see, like I said, guys towards the topic of armies and what I'm doing talking about armies. So yeah. In a sort of way, Timmy Church was supposed to go and do that similar with Francesca Church. She used to call herself Francesca. Her name was Aisha, or at least she was given that name, or she asked for that name. And yeah, like, before she was white, she asked for the name Aisha, and then she decided to change her mind and call herself Francesca. Some sort of, that's my real name. That's like a name I want to choose for myself. Again, people are heading a really bad direction for trying to pick new names, and not make the old names, like, actually, like, work for them. I never had a problem naming Hassan. He actually tried to suggest I change my name to Hassan, or whatever that is. But I'm like, no way. Like, my name's just fine. This is another kind of spiritual attack. That was Timmy Church who tried to suggest that when I was like 6 years old or something. While in the kitchen. Anyway, yeah, I didn't do anything wrong at all. I was a model student. I went to Stanford, and I'm like a Phi Beta Kappa. It's like some sort of I don't know. Go look it up. But yeah, like, but yeah. So anyway. That was the excuse. I have to run and take care of that, and so therefore I can't leave it at home because I might find drugs or something. So I'm gonna keep you here for forever. And everyone's like, yeah, like, this is terrible. Even that mistress, like, yeah, you should probably leave. It's like, it's a terrible place to be. I'll get into more deals later on. But it's a terrible one. It's actually worse than here. Here's been longer than there. I've been here for over, like, almost 2 years. But, like, there, and that's the thing. Over there is, like, thinking, oh my god, I'm gonna leave. Like, everyone's like dreaming about leaving, going home, and eating all the nice food, and so the food's just crap and stuff. But yeah, like. So I was just waiting to go home, we need to go home, we need to go home. Like finally, phew, I did my penance sentence, and like now I'm like back home and stuff, and I won't touch this stuff again, or I might sneak and do it. Everyone does it eventually. No one's sincere about like trying to do the real program there. But if it just looks like I waited very patiently for a whole year after like about 3 months of being in some sort of holding tank, in a hospital holding tank to see what they'll do with you, and eventually say, yeah, you should do rehab. I'm like, I don't want to. Okay, that's fine. But they still leave you there, and eventually you sort of realize the only way to get out of the hospital system is by doing the rehab thing they're pushing on you. Like, okay, great. I guess I'll do it. How long is it gonna last? Some guys say, oh, just about a week or two. Some guys say, oh, about a month or two. But it's a minimum stay when official, from the this thing is just really lost on me. Didn't care. I learned a lot from that place, though. A lot. I wasn't expecting to, but that's sort of the humility I have. I learned a lot, and I believe in that place, and I believe in that program. Just that people running it are just full of shit. Pardon me. But yeah, if it just seems like you can say one or two of these things, yeah, you're fine. So don't worry about like being told that you're swearing too much for a video like this. Cool. So yeah, it's special information from experience. Yes. So anyway, it just seems like I waited patiently to be out of this damn mess. But then this sort of started, hold on, I have to put you somewhere safe so I can go somewhere I can come back. And then we found a place. It ends up being a place that taken me to before, and it even brought like the officials from the rehab place that come and explain it. I should be coming to NA meetings and stuff. And halfway house idea was what she was supposed to look into. And went behind the scene to figure out what to tell the people here. But this put me in here as if I had a mental illness or I'm starting the addiction thing all from scratch. When I've just done a whole year of addiction thing, it gave me like 3 P tests here. I'm like, what the fuck are you doing? Pardon my French, because like I've been in the rehab system for about a year, right? And I came straight from there to here, and I've been nowhere else but here. But they just keep on giving me tests that I'm getting from someone, like maybe the nurses or the security guards. I'm like, I don't talk to them. I'm in my room all day. Like, why are you hassling me? Why are you harassing me for like a sample of my what's private? Anyway, so I've been here. That was like, so I left, the rehab place in November 18th, 2024, and at the time of speaking, it's 17th June 2026. It's been like about 2 years since I was told I was free to go after having been treated for addiction or something. So what am I doing here? Well, apparently I'm here to lose weight. I'm here to become the sort of person she wants to have in her house. Otherwise, she won't accept me back for some sort of mysterious reason. The doctor's like, I don't know what to say about it. I don't say about it. Yeah, like, he's like, yeah, try talking to her more, ask her about her business, all that kind of stuff. Ask me about my job search. I'm here on the laptop. So yeah, are you looking for jobs? And how's the job search going? They brought some other kind of psychologists to come and talk to me about my job search. So like, what's going on? Like, what does this have to do with health at all? So looking to the Constitution of Ghana, like sure they can sort of drag you away if you have unsound mind, but does that sound like what my problem is? There should be a difference in Ghana between the eccentric and the unsound of mind, and there is no such thing at all. What's even just like completely bonkers, what she's doing is just me, throwing her kid into a hospital, or her so-called kid. That's supposed to be me, but that's not who I am. She has some sort of mental idea, some sort of mental fabrication. She's just thrown into a place where she's just giving money to have the problem go away for her. For as long as she cares for me, she's having some sort of vacation without me being in the house, and that kind of stuff. And then she just wants these vacations to go forever and never. Like people to me go to the country overstay their visas. Like it doesn't make some fucking sense. Again, pardon me. But yeah, I mean, yeah, if you can swear, or Drake can swear on those records, I'm pretty sure I can get through it. Like, this is my swearing, and not be like taken down. But anyway, yes. So that's pretty much all I'll say about being here. I've been here for about 2 years, since 18th of November 2024. Yeah, after spending about a whole year roughly in basically 2023. Yes. Yeah, I got in here like 2023, and or was it 2024? It might have been here. I might go in here in 2024. It might have come like in the early 2024. I spent about a year. Then around November, I was put here, and then the numbers are not quite as straightforward as you think. Numbers are not easy to reckon. But I don't want to confuse people when I start to serve. I don't want to look like I'm exaggerating how I spend there. But how do you want to put it? If I was here in 2024 after finishing the rehab thing, and I'm still here in 2026. Like, I'm not sure. No one has a plan for me. I asked for my guitar. They even brought me a chess set to play with. Like, it's just really strange about what they think you can do. I let the whole world know on X that caught my story. I complained about the media in the first video about how they won't touch me at all. Long story about the war. But yeah, they're all trying to avoid me making these records and basically challenging the traditional CNN, BBC, DW, hegemony, and creating my own kind of radio network, my own kind of TV station, which I can start to talk to my story, and maybe start making more interesting sorts of things. If I had images lined up, I can sort of click and drag off my computer and show like other things too. Like that's also kind of cool as well. So this is basically broadcasting for cheap. So yeah, that's what I'm doing. Anyway, so what am I doing? Well, there's a program called the markets. Basically, spirits also participate in markets. Everyday markets. Every does in marketing. Like it looks like you experience time. You have to sort of give up a part of your features in exchange for receiving a present moment. Exactly. You have to give up the present moment in order to receive a past. So also you have to do this sort of juggling, sort of shuffling, juggling, quick, auctioning and buying and selling just to exist in time. And yeah, there's a certain kind of way of looking at life, a certain kind of paradigm that has us all basically in markets trying to make profits. Yeah. What's a profit? Let's say a good memory is a profit, just to talk about time alone, right? Then there's also a sense of this spiritual environment. The spirit of the time has always been, self-doubts. There hasn't been any sort of spirit of the time has been unbridled enthusiasm for creativity and new art, new people's art. As in, you look at a person who's unestablished as a famous artist, even you're like, okay, that's not Picasso. Why am I looking at some guy whose name I can barely remember and I can't brag to people about that? But the person might be Picasso with another pseudonym operating, and that happens a number of times. Why is this simply the default way people look at life, as opposed to being some sort of a random spread across all sorts of different kinds of problems? Why do you all share